Hey there and welcome back to my channel! In this video, we're going to look at the Crusades. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, then let's get to it, okay? Before we dive into the whole thing, let me explain that this video is really an overview of the whole shebang, which took place over several centuries. We will only be able to cover the major events in each crusade, and we won't have time to go into great detail about any of them. And now, let's begin! The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated, supported, and sometimes participated in by the Latin Church in the medieval period. It wasn't just one war, but a whole bunch of them over a span of almost 200 years. To understand why these Crusades occurred, you need to know what was going on in the years leading up to the First Crusade in 1095. Christian pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land or the Levant, which included present-day Israel and Palestine, frequently had to pass through areas controlled by Muslims. As the number of European Christians making pilgrimages to the Holy Land increased during the 11th century, they came increasingly into conflict with Muslim authorities who often harassed or even attacked the pilgrims. Besides, many Europeans wanted more than just access to the Holy Land. They wanted it all, and by all, I mean the land itself. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade at the Council of Clermont in France. He told the French nobility that it was God's will that they should take Jerusalem, which had fallen into Muslim hands, back from the Muslims and give it to the Christian King of France. To motivate his mostly politically ambitious audience to go on a crusade, he offered them the forgiveness of their sins, which was an offer too good to refuse. There were three main motivations for going on crusade. The first was religious, the second was political, and the third was economic. Some German princes seized the chance to expand their territories by gaining land in the east. Others saw it as a chance to be part of an elite band of fighters who would earn glory for God and their country. And still others simply wanted to see the world. Once Urban II had lit the fire of enthusiasm, the French quickly got behind the idea and thousands of ill-disciplined commoners joined the call. These were not your typical soldiers. Many were peasants who had never held a sword in their lives. And when they arrived in the Holy Land, they soon found out why. But before we get into the consequences of the First Crusade, if you are enjoying this video and want more, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get back to the consequences. The First Crusade was a huge success. By 1099, the Crusaders had captured Jerusalem, and 4 Crusader states were established in the Levant, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which lasted until 1187. After that, Jerusalem was under Muslim rule once again. And because of that, the Second Crusade began in 1147. The immediate cause of the Second Crusade was the fall of Edessa, a small Crusader state near Armenia, to the Zengiz Turks in 1144. Pope Eugene III called for the crusade, and many Germans and French responded to the call. But unlike the First Crusade, the Second Crusade was a failure. The Crusaders did not take Jerusalem, nor did they come close, and many of them died of starvation, disease, and exhaustion. The Third Crusade began in 1189 after the great Muslim leader Saladin took Jerusalem in 1187. Saladin was the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, and he was known for his military skill, piety, and fairness. Even his enemies respected him. His most famous opponent was Richard the Lionheart, King of England from 1189 to 1199. Richard led an army of English, French, and German nobles into battle against Saladin, hoping to win back Jerusalem. But despite some early victories, Richard and the Crusaders were no match for the Muslim leader. In 1192, Richard made a truce with Saladin, agreeing to give back some captured territory and allow Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem. This treaty ended the Third Crusade. Although the Crusaders didn't take Jerusalem, they did gain some important rights for pilgrims. By this point in history, though, the European kingdoms were growing tired of the Crusades. That all changed in 1202 when Pope Innocent III called for a crusade against the city of Zara in Croatia, which was ruled by a Christian king. But before the Crusaders could reach Zara, they were hired by Venice to attack the city of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines were fellow Christians, but they were in good standing with the Pope because their emperor had aligned himself with the rival Eastern Orthodox Church. And so instead of attacking the Muslims, the Crusaders attacked another Christian city. This event became known as the Sack of Constantinople, and it happened in 1204. The Crusaders looted and pillaged the city, weakening Byzantium once and for all. The Fourth Crusade was an unmitigated disaster for the Byzantines, but it was a blessing for the Republic of Venice, which had been hired to transport the Crusaders to Zara. Venice profited greatly from the sack of Constantinople. After the Fourth Crusade, there were several more crusades, but none of them were very successful. In 1218, the Fifth Crusade ended in disaster. The Crusaders laid siege to Damietta in Egypt, but they couldn't take the city and were forced to retreat. The Sixth Crusade in 1228 to 1229 resulted in a treaty with the Muslims that granted Christians access to Jerusalem without having to conquer the city. The Seventh Crusade in 1248 to 1254 resulted in the capture of Tunis by Louis IX of France. But the city was retaken by the Muslims a few months later. Louis was captured by the Sultan, but he was released and returned to France. The Eighth Crusade in 1270 ended when Louis IX and many of his knights died of disease in Tunisia. The Ninth Crusade in 1271 to 1272 resulted in little more than a humiliating retreat. And finally, the 10th Crusade in 1273 ended with the loss of Acre, the last Crusader stronghold. And that was that. The Crusades were over. Now let's wrap this up with a look at some key figures from the Crusades. First up is Pope Urban II. Remember, he called for the First Crusade in 1095 and set the whole thing in motion. Then there's Saladin, the great Muslim leader who fought against the Crusaders and showed them that there was more to life than just killing people who were different from them. Richard the Lionheart is next. He's become a symbol of Crusader bravery, although he might have been a bit overrated. Finally, Byzantine Emperor Alexios I, who called on the West for help against the Turks. His request would eventually lead to the Fourth Crusade and the sack of Constantinople. So what were the consequences of the Crusades? Well, first off, the Crusades deepened the mistrust between Christians and Muslims. The image of the fanatical Crusader and the noble savage became firmly entrenched in popular culture. Politically, the Crusades weakened the Byzantine Empire and strengthened the monarchs of Europe. Economically, the Crusades boosted trade in Europe and brought back spices, silk, and other goods from the East. Culturally, the Crusades led to an exchange of ideas, science, and knowledge between East and West. And in the long run, the Crusades left a legacy of conflict, but also of connections between the East and West. Okay? That's what you need to know about the Crusades. If you want more medieval history, check out my Medieval Europe playlist. It's right over here. And if you want me to keep making these videos, then by all means subscribe and I shall oblige. I'm out.